Hello and welcome everybody to our fourth podcast, Skincare and Beyond. Today I'm joined by the lovely Jessica, who I will let pronounce her own surname because regardless of how many times I've practiced it, I can't quite get it right. But Jessica, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Just in terms of your background, I guess, and giving our viewers a little bit of an oversight, you were diagnosed with skin cancer in 2018. And since then, you've tirelessly campaigned to raise awareness and education around sun safety and skin cancer, and also done your utmost to try and help remove that from SPF.
That's right, yeah.
So, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So, the name is Jessica Zbinden-Webster.
It was a Zbinden.
Yeah, it is a tricky one. And it's Swiss, which is why it's so unusual, although we do share the double barrel curse. I started out working in politics, in policy and strategy, and I suppose that's helped me out a little bit with my own campaign. But as you say, I was busy working away, living a very normal life in my 20s, and at the age of 26, got the diagnosis that changed everything. I was told I had skin cancer, and from then, everything in my life has pretty much changed.
Okay. So let's talk pre-diagnosis then. Obviously, Face the Future is a skincare business. Talk me through what your skincare was like pre-diagnosis.
So when I say bare minimum, I mean bare minimum.
Okay.
I mean, I was very busy and skincare was probably at the bottom of my agenda. My skin was lucky if it got a slap of moisturizer in the morning.
Oh, okay.
To be perfectly honest with you. It was very, very lax.
I laugh now, but
no, I mean,
can imagine.
Yeah. Present me is not very proud of past me and my lax approach to skincare. I was just very busy, not thinking about skin, certainly not thinking about cancer or skin cancer prevention, which I now know there's something that everybody should be thinking about when they address their face in the mornings and are, choosing which products to put on their faces. I was just really living my life. The last thing I ever thought would happen to me was that I would get skin cancer until I found a blemish on my skin. And then everything sort of changed.
Okay. So before we talk about the diagnosis and everything changed, what's your skincare routine now?
So my skincare routine now is much more rigorous, I'm happy to say. Definitely is centered around sun safety. So I will double cleanse, I tone, moisturize, and then I will always religiously apply an SPF. I use SPF 50 plus. Varying different brands, different products. Sometimes I prefer a mist, as we were discussing. Sometimes I prefer a cream. Yeah. There are so many fabulous products out there on the market and so many of which use stock. So the consumer really is spoiled for choice when it comes to picking out sunscreen and sun safety products that are actually a joy to wear.
Yes.
And to invest in. And, I've certainly benefited from that. I love choosing and shopping for new sunscreens now and really take pleasure in implementing that in my skincare routine.
Yeah. Have you found any products that you absolutely love and would swear by?
Yes, I do have some hero products. I think that the gold standard for me is La Roche-Posay's Invisible Mist, the SPF 50. It's so effective when you're on the go, and it's great for topping up because not many people really understand that you need to top your sunscreen up during the day. And so that is what mists are so great for. You can apply them under or over your makeup. Yeah. And that product in particular just glides seamlessly over a made-up face, which is very handy.
Yeah. And they're so hydrating as well. So really you get two for one. You get your hydration and you get your sun protection.
Exactly.
Yeah. Does it depend on the weather?
It does depend on the weather. Yeah, very stereotypical. I like more creams in the wintertime and more sprays in the summertime.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, I use different face and body products.
Yeah.
I just like a different feel, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk then about your diagnosis. I know you said that there's no hold barred, that you're quite happy to talk about it. So diagnosed in 2018, you said you were 26.
Yeah, I was 26.
That must have been a bit of a shock.
It was a complete shock to me. I think that my idea of somebody who got skin cancer was very much led by a stereotype. You know, if you'd asked me what's the cliched Briton with skin cancer, I would have probably said septuagenarian with leathery skin who spent their lives tanning on a beach, not a 26-year-old who was always very sun-averse and pale. But I saw a blemish one day underneath my eye, and over the following months I realised that it wasn't going away. And because it wasn't a mole, which I'd always connected to skin cancer and to melanoma, I just kept ignoring it. I kept ignoring the issue.
What did you think it was then? So you say blemish. What did it look like? Because we all obviously have blemishes.
Yeah.
Why did you ignore it?
So it was pretty much like a blocked pore. That's what it looked like. And that is what I assumed that it was. Like a stubborn blocked pore on my face. And I had some problem skin as a teenager.
Right.
And into my early 20s, actually, on and off. So when I saw something new, like a new lesion, a new blemish or blocked pore, I wasn't panicking.
No.
I was just thinking, this is just an unfortunate, stubborn blemish on my face. And that is why I downplayed it. It's also why I ignored it.
Okay. What made you realise that it wasn't and that you needed to do something about it?
So it was an unchanging blemish. If anything, it was growing ever so slightly, ever so slowly.
Okay.
Imperceptible day to day, though. It's only when I look back on pictures I saw how much it was actually growing. And because the lesion wasn't itching and it wasn't painful, I left it alone.
Yeah.
One day, I was a few weeks into a new job. I was sat at my desk, I rubbed my eye, and my eye started bleeding.
Right, okay.
This skin under here just came away. And my face was, it was teeming with blood. So obviously that was a bit of a shocker.
I was going to say that must have been very, very difficult to
It was, because I
contemplate, really.
Well, yeah, it was just so, it was such a dramatic thing and seemingly out of nowhere. And I thought, that was the moment at which I thought something's not right. And so I went to see my GP the following day, who pretty much took one look at me, one look at the lesion and said, you've got skin cancer.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was totally, it just blew me away. As I said, you don't think about people in their 20s getting skin cancer. Never mind people who don't really like the sun or tanning. But it happens to me, and it's happening to a lot of other people.
In terms of timescales then, Jessica, from you first noticing it, because I know you said it, you couldn't really notice a difference day on day, from when you first noticed it to when you actually, unfortunately, touched it and it started bleeding at work, how long are we talking about?
I would say about between 6 and 9 months.
So not that long then, really?
Not that long. However, I have looked through my camera roll in the sort of year to 18 months preceding my diagnosis. And if you look really hard, and I mean really hard, and zoom in, you can see the beginnings of the blemish. The lesion that turned out to be a tumour.
As I say, I've got blemishes, and it's part of getting older. I was like, oh gosh, I've got another age spot or whatever it might be. Yeah. There's always, I don't know whether your brain tries to calm yourself down by saying it's just this, it's just that, as opposed to actually,
absolutely,
I do need to check and I do need to make sure I'm monitoring anything for the slight change.
Absolutely. And don't be fooled by the fact that these lesions aren't painful or aren't itching. Just because they're not causing you an irritating sensation does not mean that they're not malignant.
Yeah. Well, I was very much like you before I came into the industry. I associated it with moles. Yeah. And I thought if it was itchy or it's bled, that was a sign that there's something wrong. But if it stayed the same, everything was fine. But again, it's down to education, isn't it? It's really strange.
Yeah.
Just in relation to then the doctor. So you went to the GP about your eye. You had no inkling there was going to be something really, really serious. I assume you went on your own?
I did.
So what was that like? You sat in your GP surgery and you're just being told that you've got skin cancer.
I took a moment. I gave myself 10 minutes to react, and then I went back into the office. Because there was nothing that I could do in that moment. And I think that a lot of people who are given cancer diagnoses, you know, regardless of the type of cancer that they have, they don't really come to terms with it while the process is ongoing. It's only upon reflection that they look back and see that version of themselves and think, oh gosh, I want to help you. Yeah. So at the time, I very much minimized it and just carried on. I was also assured by my medical team that because the tumor was at this point judged to be quite large, and because I was so young, and it was highly unusual, that I would have my operations quite quickly. So in my head, I'm just thinking, you've got this diagnosis, just get your head down, get through it. It will all be over soon.
Right. And did you get that reassurance from the GP at the time then? Because listening to you now, you sound very, very calm. And I'm thinking, were you calm at the time? Or is it just now that you've had a chance to reflect and you've been through the surgery and everything is fine? Because when you said to me, I give myself 10 minutes, I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, I can't believe you're thinking, I'm just going to give myself 10 minutes and then go back to work.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has a different way of coping with that, I suppose. But for me, I'm very much I try to be a bit of a pragmatist. And I thought there is nothing that I can do in this moment. I cannot have the surgery tomorrow. I can't have it today. I can either, you know, cry my eyes out and go down a horrible rabbit hole on Google, or I can just get on with it. And so I chose the latter. Also, I think with a skin cancer diagnosis, the more you start reading about it as an active patient, the more worried you can get. And sometimes it's better to have like a tiny bit of ignorance alongside you as you're going through that process. So for instance, as I got further into my medical pathway, I was told that because of the position of my skin cancer, which was on my lower eyelid, which is now covered by a graft, it could have infiltrated my optic nerve, which would have then been effectively a highway to the brain, which is a whole different type of cancer and different type of illness that you're dealing with there. The more you learn about it, the more scary it can all get. I was just very focused on living a normal life and getting rid of the cancer as soon as possible.
What reassurance, if any, did the GP give you at that initial diagnosis?
Not a great deal.
Right.
He had never seen this cancer in somebody as young as me.
Okay. And did he tell you that?
He did tell me that.
Wow, okay.
And then that was reinforced as I went along the medical pathway, to the point that during my surgeries, a consultant actually came out of retirement to sit in on my skin graft because he had heard about me through the grapevine and couldn't believe that somebody my age with such an advanced tumour had presented. And so he sort of, he sat in on the surgery. In the scheme of things, it's quite reassuring to think that not many young people are having advanced tumours. However, I don't think that's the way things are trending. As we discussed before, I think that skin cancer in young people is just going to become more pronounced.
Absolutely. So, diagnosed, you knew that it wasn't something that was going to be operable quite quickly. You've talked about your medical pathway. What does that look like? What did you have to go through, Jessica, to actually, have to say they've done an amazing job?
Thank you.
You wouldn't really be able to tell at all. It's only because I know you've been pointing. So what did that journey look like for you?
First of all, I think it's important to say that the NHS team that I had at my disposal were absolutely phenomenal, and the advances in the surgeries that you can have as a skin cancer patient are just incredible. I had something which is called Mohs surgery, MOHS, and that involves essentially excising a tumour, taking the skin away and putting it under a microscope and actually seeing in real time whether or not the margins of the tumour have been removed.
Okay.
Which is just incredible that they can do that. So I was thrilled that I was going to have this surgery. Not so thrilled when I heard that it was all going to be under local anaesthetic.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not the type of surgery I would have associated with local anaesthetic.
Exactly.
Knock me out.
Exactly. So that was a toughie.
How long did the surgery take then? Sorry to interrupt.
It was relatively quick, but it felt like a
I was
lifetime.
gonna say.
Yeah. So I don't consider myself to be a particularly claustrophobic person, but during that surgery, it was very intense. I had a local anesthetic, obviously injected in my eye area, which is not very pleasant.
No.
And then a surgeon crouching over me under the bright light with a nurse at her side, whose job it was to basically continually mop up the blood that was coming out, because there are so many blood vessels in that area. So you know what's happening. You're fully cognizant. You know that your eyelid is being cut away. So it's fairly traumatic. Yeah. But it was over. The nurses and the doctors were great, and I was bandaged up immediately afterwards, with the knowledge that I would be going into my second surgery the following day.
Okay.
So the second part of the surgery for my type of cancer and for the area in which I had it was a skin graft. So I was told by the oculoplastics team that there were going to be two options for where they would take the graft to cover the hole that the tumour had left. The first was going to be from this sort of area here around the neck, because the skin on your eye is unique, as you know. You need different cosmetics and different skincare products to deal with that eye area. So they try and find the closest match. So plan A was to take it from here. Plan B was to take it from the skin around my collarbone, because that's also quite thin. And then the doctor peeled back my bandage and his features immediately shifted. And he said, right, we're going to go with plan C, which is the phrase no patient wants to hear ever. And it turned out that the hole was so big that the tumour had left. It had effectively taken away my entire lower eyelid. And so they had to then take a graft from my inner arm area, the least hairy area. So I was told.
It's also a little bit thicker, isn't it?
It is thicker, yeah. So I was pleased that I wasn't going to have a hairy patch of skin on my face.
I mean, we're laughing, but it's not funny.
It's not fun. I mean, you have to find humour in those moments. But yeah, I suddenly was dealing with a world where my arm was on my face. So they took that away. I've got a huge scar underneath here now from where that skin was taken. And they shave it down, so it's really, really, really thin. And then they graft it over the hole. And then you're in a pressure bandage for, I want to say 10 days afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why did you have to go for option 3 then? Is it because the tumour was bigger than...
Yes, right. The tumour was so fast growing and so infiltrative. I was told that it had roots like a tree. Yeah. So they had to end up removing the entire lower eyelid, which left such a huge hole in my face. Can't address it with stitches, obviously.
Yeah.
You have to bear in mind the mechanism of the eye and how it works, how you blink. And so they needed to take a huge wad of skin and graft it over. Yeah.
And how long did it take from the diagnosis to you had 2 surgeries?
That's right.
To the final surgery then?
3 months.
3 months. And then you said that you had the bandage on for 10 days?
I want to say 10 days, yeah.
What happened when they took that off? How did you feel?
That was a really difficult moment because I was confronting my new face. And it's a really funny thing. When somebody goes through cancer, whatever type of cancer, you do end up losing part of yourself, whether physically or psychologically. You can never quite return to the state you were in before your diagnosis. And as somebody who lost part of themselves physically, quite noticeably, it has somewhat defined life thereafter, because I look in the mirror and I confront what happens to me every single day. And so losing that part of myself, having, quote, disfigured appearance for a few years, was a real mental hurdle.
Yes. Mm. How did you cope with that? Because, you come across as somebody who's got an awful lot of resilience, and we talked about your matter-of-fact approach to things. But as you say, looking in the mirror every single day, I guess maybe you would have mourned a little bit for what life was like previously. How did you cope, Jessica?
Yeah, you do. Look, you will naturally pine for your old appearance, but I've sort of chosen to take what's happened to me and to channel it into something greater than just being another statistic or another person who has had skin cancer. And I think actually it's very helpful to look in the mirror every day and see my scar. Part of my skincare routine now, which I didn't mention before actually, was that I have to massage my scar every day because the skin contracts, the graft naturally knots itself, which impacts the function of the eye. So I'm massaging my skin every day, taking care of my graft every day. And since starting my campaigning efforts against fat on sunscreen, that has actually been a great incentivizer, a great motivator, So there are negatives, but there have also been positives for me.
Yeah. Well, there's been some amazing positives, hasn't there, in terms of you campaigning. I'm not sure if our audience will be aware, but last year, FTF carried out our own survey to understand the UK's feelings on SPF and skin cancer and see whether people correlated those two together. I was shocked by some of the findings of the campaign. So, for example, I've got a couple of stats that shocked me here. 68% of the UK are more worried about sunburn than they are about getting skin cancer. So sunburn's more important than skin cancer. They're concerned about that. Only 14% of the UK wear SPF every day. 55% only apply it when it's sunny.
Yeah.
50% of us only buy SPF when we're going on holiday. And 14% of people in the UK never apply sunscreen, regardless of weather conditions or where they are. So I was shocked by that. Are you concerned about the general lack of awareness and education around skin cancer and skin cancer prevention?
It's hugely concerning, I think, for anybody with an interest in this. Skin cancer, melanoma, for instance, is preventable in 9 out of 10 cases. That's 90% of cases. And yet it's also the most common form of cancer in the UK. Those statistics side by side should be ringing alarm bells for everybody. The fact that the most common form of cancer is also one of the most preventable. I mean, it's nuts. It tells us that there is something fundamentally wrong with our relationship to sun safety and also a fundamental education gap, because it is ultimately on all of us to take care of ourselves, to take care of our skin and to actively participate in our own skin cancer prevention. I wish that I had known more about it before my diagnosis.
Why do you think there is that lack of education? I mean, I think of some of the stats that we've been investigating in relation to Australia. So I was shocked to find that we have more skin cancer cases per year, and it is increasing, than somewhere like Australia.
Yeah.
Is it just because of the country that we live in? Is it because of the education that goes into sunscreen and sun safety here in the UK? What do you think, Jessica?
It's all to do with education and also a government partaking in educating its public with a view to directly improving public health. So, for instance, in Australia, there was a very famous campaign called Slip, Slop, Slap.
Yep.
Which encouraged people to take ownership of their sun safety by generously using sunscreen. And that made a huge difference to skin cancer rates. The Australian government also removed their VAT equivalent from sunscreen products, as well as shutting down tanning salons. So they saw the problem, they stopped, thought about it, crafted an excellent public awareness campaign, and, the results speak for themselves. The fact that the sunshine capital of the world has fewer incidences of skin cancer than our rainy little island is a bit of a shocker.
It's alarming, isn't it? And you just said there about your sunbed shops.
Oh, that's a whole other thing.
I actually thought, so, I was born in the 70s, so I'm a lot older than you. But it was natural when I was younger and a teenager to go and use a sunbed. In fact, unfortunately, I was one of those people that hired it, that had the canopy that went over the bed, and I'd sit there to get my pre-holiday tan.
Yeah.
But I thought that was something that my generation did. We were at some award ceremonies in London earlier this year, and I was shocked to see the number of sunbed shops still. And I actually did say to the team at the time, and they'll be saying, yes, you told me. And I was like, do people still go on sunbeds? I'm like, yes, they do.
Yes, they do. And I think sunbed use between 18 and 24-year-olds has risen by, I want to say, somewhere in the 60th percentile. Wow. And whether that's due to social media influencing or just the chokehold of beauty standards, I don't know. But using a sunbed is one of the most toxic things you can possibly do for your skin health. UV rays are classed by the WHO as a grade 1 carcinogen. That means there is a direct causatory link between them and skin cancer. And my God, it drives me insane every time I walk past the solarium on my high street.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel the same.
Absolutely. I can't remember what the results were from the survey that we did at the beginning of the year, but it was around confidence and the fact that people feel more confident when they've got a tan. So I wonder if that's why it's more prevalent with the younger generation, because they want a way of feeling more confident in their own skin.
Yeah, potentially. And there are a lot of young, impressionable eyes on social media influencers, and there are a lot of self-appointed wellness and beauty gurus who spread a lot of misinformation and unattainable beauty standards out there. It's a bit of a toxic cocktail. And
so many filters that actually what you're seeing is not just misinformation, it's distorted pictures.
Yes, it's total fantasy. Yeah. So it's really difficult. And the tanned beauty standard ideal is incredibly problematic on a number of levels. I don't know that, a sunscreen campaign can begin to dissemble that, but it's a conversation that certainly people in the healthcare, dermatology, skincare, beauty space should be having, because it's having a real effect on Gen Z and all kinds of people.
Absolutely. Well, you're really trying to raise awareness and increase the amount of education there is around sun safety.
Yeah.
So just talk us through some of the campaigning that you've been doing, Jessica, and also what motivated you to do this? I know you said earlier you didn't want to just be another statistic.
Yeah.
But what, was there a critical point? What made you think, right, I'm going to campaign now? And talk us through some of the amazing things that you've been doing.
Thank you. So I think the first and most important step on the journey that I've been on has been to share my own experience with skin cancer. It's something that I hadn't previously spoken about that freely, purely because I didn't want it to become a defining story. Make of that what you will. Maybe I was trying to bury it somewhere and it just wouldn't go away. But eventually, something reached critical mass, and I thought, actually, I can probably do a bit of good by sharing my story here. So I put some pretty gory pictures on Instagram. I know you're a bit squeamish.
I am a bit squeamish.
Swerve those.
Yeah.
I took a lot of pictures, I realised, during my surgery journey. And looking back, I can see just how well they hammer home the message of skin cancer prevention. So I posted those on my Instagram. I shared my story. And then a few weeks later, I wrote a piece in The Guardian on skin cancer prevention and on what I've been through, basically. And around the same time, I decided to launch my campaign. My campaign's called Axe the SPF Tax. It's on change.org, and it essentially lobbies for the abolishment of VAT on sunscreen products. And what really drove me to that endpoint was actually adding up the amount of money that one spends on sunscreen with the VAT added on top. Because if you use sunscreen as you ought, you end up buying it fairly regularly.
Yes.
It's an essential healthcare product. When I found that it was taxed as a luxury or cosmetic, it irked me to say the least. Because it makes it more expensive, and that money is, in my view, needlessly going back to the exchequer, but also because of the principle of it being taxed as a luxury or cosmetic product, when I know full well, having been through the journey, that skin cancer prevention is not a luxurious act, and it is not a cosmetic pursuit. It is essential healthcare prevention.
Yeah. No. Well, let's play a little game.
Yeah.
Because you've talked about the fact that SPF is taxed.
Yeah.
And I share your sentiment in that it's not a luxury item, it's essential.
Yeah.
And actually, when I was doing a little bit of research, when you talk about tax, they say that anything that's classed as essential is generally not taxed. So let's talk about what we think is essential and not essential, or not us, what the government think is essential and not essential.
Let's get into it.
Let's go. So the first one, and this is a bit of a trick, clothes.
So I think children's clothes are either VAT exempt or VAT zero rated, but perhaps not adults.
That's absolutely right. So yes, a child is classed as needing to have clothes. They're essential, but as adults, obviously, clothes are not essential for us.
It's a luxury.
I was going to say, well, I don't know what I would make of that. People coming in saying, well, it's not essential that I wear anything. But yes, so children's are essential, adults are not. And therefore, children's are VAT free, adults are not. Let's talk about food. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, nuts.
Oh, nuts. I think they might be VAT free.
They are VAT free.
Yeah.
Until they're roasted or salted. And then they're not essential.
That's a completely different thing then, isn't it?
Absolutely. What about caviar?
Caviar, that's a great one. I want to say that it's an exotic food and therefore it is VAT free.
It is VAT free.
Yeah.
Because it's food. So it doesn't matter how exotic it is, it's food.
Okay.
So it's essential. So my caviar is essential.
I love that.
Do you? I don't love caviar. You could tax it for me. What about biscuits?
So I think that biscuits are VAT free. And I personally enjoy going down the list of them and the different descriptors for different biscuits, i.e. cookies with chocolate chips, obviously essential, so therefore VAT free.
Yeah.
Jaffa cakes, VAT free, along with also edible cake toppers and all kinds of different confectionery.
Yes. So biscuits are not taxed unless the chocolate is on the biscuit. And then they are. If the chocolate is inside the biscuit, like you said, a chocolate cookie, or if it's a bourbon, it's tax-free. And as you say, the same applies to chocolate cakes. So all cakes are classed as essential and therefore are tax-free. But if it's smothered in chocolate, then it's a luxury. So you need to pay tax on it.
Well, I don't know if I disagree with chocolate cake.
I was going to say, I do think chocolate is essential. Even if it's inside or outside, both should be free for tax for me. What about toilet roll?
I think toilet roll might be taxed.
It is.
Yeah.
Toilet roll is not essential.
Yeah.
Really? Can't believe that. What about buying a lottery ticket?
Online betting is VAT free, so I'm going to say it's VAT free.
It is.
Yeah.
It's tax free. And what about if you go and play the bingo?
Yeah, that is also VAT free.
It is tax free.
Yeah.
So SPF is not essential, it's taxed, but you can buy a lottery ticket, you can go play the bingo, you can buy caviar, and you can buy chocolate biscuits, and they're all not taxed. It just seems a little bit bizarre, doesn't it?
When you put those items side by side with something like sunscreen, it really illustrates for itself how ludicrous the taxation system is.
It's crazy. So just talk me through a little bit more about, you mentioned a minute ago about the Axe the SPF campaign that you've got, SPF Tax, I should say.
Yeah.
So talk me through that campaign. Let our listeners know where they can find out more about it, what they can do to help.
Yeah, sure. So the campaign is called Axe the SPF Tax, as you say. You can find it on change.org Axe the SPF Tax. And it is a petition to abolish VAT on sunscreen products. And there are many angles to this. I think we could talk for hours about this. It's about stopping lives from needlessly being disrupted or shortened by skin cancer. It's about empowering consumers to take better control of their sun safety and skin cancer prevention. But it's also about, ensuring the longevity of the NHS and the state, because it costs hundreds of millions of pounds per year to treat skin cancer patients in this country. And with skin cancer rates rocketing, that status quo is utterly unsustainable. So there is an intersecting healthcare and economic argument to this petition. It makes sense on so many levels, and I think it's really, really important. So if you agree, then go to change.org/Axe the SPF Tax and add your signature.
So how much support have you got at the moment? How many people have you got signed up?
I think it's just under 3,000 in a few months.
Okay.
Which is a pretty good start.
It is. And is there a target in terms of how many you need? Does things change as you get more and more people supporting?
So I don't have a specific target for signatures in mind. For me, every signature is so valuable and so appreciated that all these petition signatures are actually running in tandem with the campaign itself, which I'm spearheading, which has a lot of different tributaries, and one of which is political engagement, which is also obviously so important. And so I'm really delighted that a campaign that is as recent as mine has got backing from the Liberal Democrat Party as of last month. So that is really promising. It's great that it's got backing from beauty and wellness insiders and organisations who are better placed than many to dictate whether or not sunscreen is a beauty product. And of course it's not. And it's also, it's got backing from dermatologists, from oncologists, from different charities in the cancer space. So I'm not going to be too ruled by or hung up on the amount of signatures. The more the merrier, but it is one facet of a very multi-layered campaign.
Absolutely. And how close do you think we are in terms of petitioning Parliament and getting them to change the tax stance on SPF?
So I'm under no illusions that there is a really long road ahead. Potentially, there are so many good causes, worthy causes that are all vying for attention from the Exchequer. And as you very adeptly illustrated, the taxation system is absolutely bonkers. So it's a pretty crowded space. I really back myself. I really back this campaign because it is the right thing to do on so many levels. And so I will be consistently petitioning and lobbying policymakers for this change.
So I think our audience will already be aware that at Face the Future, we want to really help our customers in terms of education on sun safety and cancer awareness, and that we launched our 366 Days of SPF campaign this year, 366 days with it being a leap year. And we're also going to be doing a similar campaign next year as well. Part of the campaign was around VAT burn, where we took the VAT off SPF for quite a long period of time for our customers, and we're doing the same thing next year. What else do you think people like me, people in the beauty industry can be doing to support the campaign?
That's a great question. I think to answer very simply, you're already doing it. I think that by taking the step to cover VAT, as a retail organisation, you are making a very powerful statement about where you stand on this issue. I also think that it's helpful on many levels, but one of which is a great litmus test for policy change is to work out whether or not a policy would be catching up with the environment it's in, or whether it's forging ahead and expecting the world to catch up with it. And in the case of axing the SPF tax and VAT burn, it's definitely the former, right? You are setting the standard by which policymakers should adhere. And I think that is one of the most convincing things to put forward to policymakers, to politicians, to those change makers, when convincing them that this is the right thing to do.
In terms of the vision then, because you say we're under no illusions, isn't going to change overnight. In terms of your vision, in terms of if I could say to you, okay, we've got a magic wand here, Jessica, what is it that you want? What is it that you would like to happen? And the timescales, what would that be?
So with my magic wand, I would immediately take VAT off of sunscreen products because it's the right thing to do, as we've discussed. But I would also marry that with a public education campaign, because it's one thing laying the incentive out there for people to buy more sunscreen, but actually people need to understand how it works, why it's so important, how does skin cancer come about and who's most at risk and when. And so for me, the two very much go hand in hand. I think that it's about incentivizing consumers by lowering the cost of this product, but it's also about that wraparound education and awareness to change behavior and to drive, a positive outcome for our public health.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Jessica.
Thank you for having
just
me.
a few additional questions, because I'm really, really nosy. But if you could tell yourself one thing, the younger you, one thing, what would that have been?
Wear your sunscreen, educate yourself, and at the first sign of a suspicious lesion, go and see your GP.
Okay.
And that's advice that I would pass on to just about everybody, any age, any skin tone, any lifestyle. It's really important to get ahead and monitor your skin regularly and just take really good care of it, because you only get one skin. Yeah.
Okay. And if you could ask our audience any one thing, because we like to get our listeners involved in this, what would you ask our listeners?
I would ask, what more can the skincare industry and indeed the government be doing to encourage better use of sunscreen and better awareness of its importance?
That's really good. What do you think the answer will be?
Hammer the message home.
Yeah.
Just hammer it home. Don't stop talking about it. Keep it on the agenda. Because skin cancer is now effectively a public health emergency. It's on all of our plates. It's all of our business. It's up to all of us to take preventative steps to stop it spreading even further.
It is. It's absolutely about education. Yeah. And everyone has a role to play in that. Everybody can talk about it.
Yeah.
We've got the press, we've got influencers, we've got government, we've got owners of business, we've got people working in different industries, just to be able to talk and say, have you put your SPF on today? So no, that's a really good question. We're really interested to see what our listeners have to say.
Yeah, and creative ideas, unexpected ways in which we can get that on the agenda. Yeah. I'd be all ears.
Oh, fabulous. And then final question. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know about the campaign, about anything that they really need to keep an eye out for the next 12 months?
So I have some exciting things in the pipeline. Again, unfortunately, I can't discuss them too openly at the moment. But I would encourage everybody with an interest in this matter to go to change.org/Axe the SPF Tax, sign the petition. That will automatically sign you up to get email updates from me whenever something big happens. Like we get a big, corporate backer or a political backer. And it really keeps you up to date with my campaign activities. So I would encourage them to just get on board and spread the message.
Brilliant. So if our listeners want to find out more, they need to sign up. They can also find out more about the SPF campaign and about that and things like that on our website as well, Face the Future website. Yeah. So Jessica, thank you very, very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you for talking so openly about your experience. It's very eye-opening. And as I say, I'm in awe in how you dealt with the situation. I'm not sure that I would have been as brave or as resilient. So thank you for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it.
And thank you for showing such great leadership on this matter as well. I think it's so important for organisations such as yourself to really be setting the standard for your peers, and you are doing that brilliantly. So thank you.
Thank you. It's definitely a team effort here at Face the Future. Everybody feels very passionately about this. I think everybody knows somebody who's had skin cancer, and therefore, it's close to a lot of people's hearts. We just need to try and, as you say, hammer home that message. That was easier. Not as easy to say. Hammer home the message around how we can try and prevent it. Thank you. And thank you to our listeners for listening in. Again, please follow us, please like it, and any comments that you have, please do let us know. We like to take feedback on board. Thank you.